From the towering Wasatch Mountains of the American Southwest, we welcome you to this episode of Undiscovered Utah. This show focuses on the mysteries that surround the rugged, difficult, and sometimes deadly American Southwest. I'm your host, JB, and tonight we're going to be discussing the Legend of Cibola. What's that? You have never heard of the Legend of Cibola? Oh, well, have you heard of the legend of the 7 cities of gold? Well, they are one and the same, and some researchers believe that there is good evidence that it is right here in Utah. If you have any suggestions for an upcoming episode of Undiscovered Utah, drop us an email at info@undiscoveredutah.com. Let's get started on tonight's story. In the 16th century, the tale of the 7 cities of gold, or the 7 cities of Cibola, was a very popular story that caused great excitement, particularly in Spain. Many believe this was an Aztec mythology associated with the Puebloans of what is today the southwestern United States. Giorgio Garcia recorded in his history that in 1448, ships from Portugal had sailed to an island where there were 7 cities of gold. Wait, hold on. An island? The southwest United States is definitely not an island. Okay, that is true, but hear me out. There was a map created by Gracious Benicasa in 1482 that showed Cibola as the island of Antilla, somewhere across an unknown western sea near the very edge of the world. I should mention that Cibola was known by many names, including Antilla and El Dorado. Okay, I need to step back. When Christopher Columbus and other explorers from Europe reached the New World, native people showed them that they already had existing gold and silver, copper, and turquoise, mined somewhere in the southwest. The natives did not learn to mine from the Spanish. The indigenous people of South, Central, and North America all knew how to mine and work precious metals. That is why Cortez wanted Montezuma's vast treasure. Cortez didn't teach Montezuma how to mine for gold. The natives already had the gold and knew where to find it. Cortez and other explorers just wanted to take possession of it. Many highly educated experts claim that the native people learned to mine from the Spanish because the indigenous peoples of the Americas were much too primitive of a culture to understand how to smelter ore. That is clearly not the case. For the Spaniards located in New Spain, or what today is Mexico, they were hearing fascinating tales of Cibola. Cibola was rumored to be located across a vast desert, hundreds of miles to the north. To help spread the story, in 1539, an Italian Franciscan, Marco de Naza, reached a Zuni pueblo in what today is New Mexico and called it Cibola. So when Francisco Varez de Coronado reached Cibola in 1540, it was extremely disappointed because all he found was a Zuni pueblo of adobe and not gold. It is recorded that when Coronado was in Cibola, or the Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico, he directed expeditions to continue to search the Southwest for any treasure so that the trip was not a total failure. One such expedition, led by Pedro de Torve, reached the Moqui village at Tucson, which is located in Arizona. Today we know it as Tucson. From the Moquis they learned of a great and mighty river to the north. Pedro de Tovar and his men continued north until they came across more Zuni Indians. This tribe of Zuni told the Pedro of rich land to the northwest, across desert and high mountains, where the people lived on the shores of a great lake. And these people owned great amounts of gold and silver. This land was called Tiwayo, and the lake was called Capala. Pedro reported back to Coronado without any gold, but with the promising story that there was gold still further north in the land of Tiwayo. Coronado quickly dispatched Captain Cardenas with 25 men with the assignment to find this land called Teyenyo and a lake called Capala. The captain and his men marched for 20 days through the hot, dry desert of the southwest until they came to a river. By this time they were in desperate need of water, and the river was a very welcome sight. But they could not find a path to reach the river. It was too deep within the towering canyon walls of solid sandstone. Captain Cardenas returned to Cibola to report his failure to Coronado, and that the land was much too difficult to cross. Apparently, the river that the captain tried to access was the San Juan River in southeastern Utah. The San Juan empties into the Colorado River in what is today Lake Powell. It should be noted that this wasn't the only account of the captain's expedition. There is some evidence that some of the captain's expedition did in fact cross the San Juan River and continued north. In the writings of a Jesuit Padre Perez de Rabas, he states that this smaller party reached a latitude of 40 degrees north, where in the winter it was so cold that all the rivers had frozen over, and it was also near a great lake. Then went on to say that they had crossed a country where the Indians passed their days by hunting buffaloes. So where is 40 degrees north? And is there a great lake that is at that latitude and is northwest of the San Juan River? Well, pull out your globes and let's take a look. If you don't have a globe handy, just open a browser and search the internet for a map with a latitude and longitude lines. I use arcgis.com. Okay, now find Utah. Zoom in and find 40 degrees north and scroll west, and lo and behold, there is a very large lake almost right on 40 degrees north. Look at that. It's called Utah Lake. In the 16th century, Utah Lake is shown on the maps as Lake Copala. And the valley surrounding Lake Cibola is called, you guessed it, the land of Teguino. Well, apparently the secret was out. The Spanish had a new location to search. It was in a land north and northwest of the pueblo called Cibola. It is said that almost every new expedition that was sent out to the north to find the 7 cities of gold were told by local natives that the rich mines and wealthy nation was still, quote-unquote, further north, near Lake Cibola, and in the land called Teguino, or into the land of the Utahs. Lake Cibola was sometimes called Lake Timpanogos and was labeled as such on very old Spanish maps. We all know that the Spanish shipped a huge amount of gold and silver back to Spain. We also know that many of those ships carrying rich treasure to Spain never made the entire voyage and became victims of hurricanes or were attacked by pirates in the Caribbean. But how much of this gold came from what is today Utah? Well, there's just no way to know for sure. One thing we do know for sure is that there are a lot of very old mines all over the state of Utah. We know that in the Wasatch Mountains there are many old Spanish mines that were most likely old mines that belonged to the indigenous people long before the Spanish got here. The same is true for almost every mountain range in Utah, including the Uintas. It is no surprise that many researchers believe that Utah might be the ancestral home of the Aztecs, and that is why Montezuma sent his massive treasure back to his ancestral home once he realized what Cortez was really after. As the Spanish were working their way north in search of the 7 cities of gold, the British and French were working their way south from what is today Canada in search for furs and pelts. In the writings of Richard Oclula, an English trapper, he stated the following, quote, "The Spaniards have notice of 7 cities, which old men among the Indians tell them are in the far north. They use daily much diligence in seeking them, but they cannot find them. They say that the witchcraft of the Indians is such that when they come near these towns, a mist is cast upon them so that they cannot see them." Unquote. As far as we know, the famous 7 cities of gold were never found. But great riches of gold and silver were found all around a large lake that is 40 degrees north. Is actually Lake Cibola. Even today, there are gold, silver, and copper mines all around Utah Lake. The world's largest open-pit copper mine is just north of Utah Lake. Not only are huge amounts of copper being extracted from this mine, but also huge amounts of gold are being extracted every day. This might also be the largest turquoise mine in the world, but the turquoise is pulverized in search for copper and gold. Did the Aztecs of Central America at one time call Utah Valley home? And is this the land that provided them with so much gold? Or was the story of Cibola and the 7 cities of gold just a story to get the Spanish to move on to some other land? Go back and listen to episode 1 called The Lost Treasure of Montezuma. Then listen to episode 4 the Lost Roads Mine. You could even listen to episode 23. There were giants in Utah in those days. Are all these stories related? Maybe. It does start to get you thinking that the land of Utah might have been a choice land to many people for generations, long before the pioneers called this land home. Well, that's it for tonight's episode. Remember to be safe and respectful while visiting these amazing areas of the Great Southwest, and have fun exploring. Next time you're in Utah County, drive up on one of the benches so that you can overlook the valley. Do you think it is the famed Cibola? You can find us on the internet at undiscoveredutah.com or on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search for Undiscovered Utah and be sure to follow us. Also, tell your friends about Undiscovered Utah. We would love for them to join this podcast also. Just tell them to search for Undiscovered Utah. Please join us next time as I share more about the Great Southwest. Good night, everybody.